Welcome to the Open House Podcast where women talk real estate. I'm Christina Moderis.
And I'm Steph Douglas.
This is season 6, episode 3. Happy birthday to you.
I thought you were going to say happy Friday, which all happy things. Thank you. I just had a birthday. I just turned 35.
Yeah, it was, and you went to New Orleans. So fun.
Yes, it's my favorite city. It's so close to Austin. And we used to drive. Now we fly direct. It's so quick. It's just such a fun, quick trip.
Yeah, I know. We only drive there because we always go there when we're passing through to go to Florida, even though it's like 2 hours out of the way. So now we're like, we shouldn't do that anymore because it just makes this trip so long.
So long. Yes. Yes, I know. I feel like, I mean, it's such a doable drive. If anyone's listening to this and they live in Austin and they have never been to New Orleans, drop everything you're doing and plan a trip because it's so. Message me on Instagram. Honestly, I will give you an itinerary.
Yes. I feel like every time you go there, I'm always like, oh, everything looks so well planned and thought out, and it's very fun. It's a very fun city to go to, and I feel like you did different things this time, right? Because it was just you and Alan versus like a big group.
Yes, it's also a very, very fun place to go with a group because it's so manageable. Like it's not like you're in New York where it's impossible to meet up with anyone. It's like, okay, we're gonna go over here and go to dinner, and then we'll meet back up at this bar that's like half a mile away. So yeah, I think it's one of those things about Austin that is my least favorite is that we're not that close to that much exciting fun stuff, like we're close to Houston and Dallas and San Antonio, which like, okay, fine. But like LA is close to Palm Springs and Joshua Tree and Big Bear, and it's like all of these amazing 2-hour away, and we're like 3 to 7 hours, and it's still not that cool. So
I know. Even growing up in like Atlanta, like in Georgia, like okay, it's not, but at least you can drive to like 5 different states and it doesn't take 10 hours to get out of your state.
You're near the coast, you're near Charleston, it's like you have some really cool mountains, all of it. So anyway, I think we should just make the most of Austin and like make sure that we're going to New Orleans as much as we can.
I agree.
We're staying on our buying with friends theme, and we've already released 2 podcasts about this on this topic, so we're just going to continue the fun.
Yeah. So last episode we discussed like, what goes into an operating agreement, when you should create them, what you should look for in a real estate partner, and then how to make all this actionable. Yeah, it's the theme is buying with friends, and this is our 3rd episode on it, where I'm excited to get into pitching yourself as a partner.
Yeah, and if this is the first one you're listening to, I might suggest going back to the first one just because they are like intentionally set up. So we're not going to like get into the details of what it means to buy with friends and all of that because we've already done that. But yeah, this pitching yourself is like such a big part of it, and we had to kind of learn the hard way. So we're going to tell you our secrets.
Yeah, and I feel like that kind of holds people back. We were just in an article, what was it? Newsweek, there we go.
We're in so many, it's like hard to know. It's hard to know.
My brain isn't functioning anymore. I'm at the end of my pregnancy, and it's really showing.
Yeah. Speaking of birthdays, it's very soon.
I already forgot. Okay, yes. What was I tying this?
Newsweek.
So I clicked on it today because I think it was published yesterday, and I stupidly scrolled to the comments, and there are so many people saying, oh, you should never. So we were Newsweek about buying with friends, and we anyway, so all these people like, oh, this is going to end poorly for them, like the common things that Steph and I see whenever we are talking about buying with friends. And I was telling Eric this yesterday. It's just so funny that like people hate on this so much, that I do remember when I got my license years ago, I was like in my early 20s, and every realtor or like everyone was like, millennials aren't going to buy houses. Like you shouldn't even have them as clients, as like
Yeah.
first time home buyers will never be that's a dead thing. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
What? Like, what do you it's
Yes.
just so infuriating. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's such a weird,
Literally,
like
they told
sweeping
us
statement.
yes, they told us to only focus on luxury. And it's like me and Christina, like we're not gonna focus on luxury. And they were like, yeah, first time buyers is not like no one was catering towards this market.
I know. Also, can we pause for a second to say that we're again wearing our matching
Oh my God.
sweatshirts?
I, this is so embarrassing. We wore them to the courts today. They're so comfortable.
They're so comfortable. We just look like cult leaders
Yeah.
in these. Like,
Beige.
yeah.
Oh,
Anyway, sorry. But yeah, so um yeah, I just it's just funny that like people say these sweeping statements about things that I just it's the trend that's happening right now. Like we are I mean, we are predictors of real estate trends in that way. Like and it's kind of obvious too, right? Like right now it's hard for many people to buy a house. It's like housing is an issue in our country. So what are people going to do? They're a lot of people aren't getting married as early as they once were. They're not having kids as early as they once were. They're going to seek buying with friends. They're going to seek that out over, buying with their significant other or because they are married and have a child. Like they're going to seek out other options because that is how they can do it. Like that's how Steph and I got started.
it's kind of like in the same vein of having children or not having children. People aren't being as traditional anymore. People are either getting married later or having children later or not having children at all. And so we're kind of rewriting how homeownership looks. And it doesn't need to just be that, oh, we're now all forever renters. Like that is not the answer because owning property is so important to people's net worth, to people's freedom. So this is like it does seem obvious now, but like it wasn't obvious back then. And so it is interesting that this is starting to pick up, yet still getting so much hate.
Yeah. And then one day in like 5 to 10 years, everyone's gonna be like buying with friends. Like then you're gonna see all the realtors and all the people being like, yeah,
Right.
this is duh, this is so obvious. And it's like, okay, yeah, well, you were hating on us when we were
Yeah.
the first people talking about it. But anyway, so um I want to talk about the importance of presenting yourself as a valuable partner. And just as a reminder from last week, um we came up with like a preferred partnership quality chart
Framework.
framework. There
Yeah,
we go.
yeah.
And so there's four things that create like a perfect partnership. Talent, so people who have experience with project management or real estate, buying a house. Time, so some
Yeah.
people will have more time to manage contractors or manage the logistics that go with buying a house. And then cash, some people have more cash than maybe your partner that you decide to link up with to buy a house has less cash than you. And then also buying power. So if you have a W-2 job, a lender is going to approve you for a loan easier than someone who works for themselves or just started working for themselves.
Yeah.
1099.
Yeah, so you need all four of those things. And when we say talent, it's not like you have to have experience in doing this before. Like maybe it's someone who's listened to this podcast and they're like, actually, yes, or someone who has just like a really good mindset around this process who maybe hasn't done it before. But you do need all four of these things to buy a house in general. One person could have all four of these things, or a traditionally romantic couple could have all four of these things. But we're talking about having all four of these things with one or two or five friends, cousins, some non-traditional partners. And you do need to position yourself as a quality partner. And so that's kind of what we're going to talk about today is how do you do that? Like, how do you bring this up to someone in like a very, professional and valuable way to where you can kind of get the ball rolling?
Yeah, and that's a good point with the talent. Like talent can come in many forms and that can be you have experience with investing or you're a really good communicator, like that. I mean, honestly, both sides should have that. And that's actually when you are trying to communicate to someone your idea about partnering, so like you're pitching them about buying a house, like you do need to be a really good communicator. You have to have all your research up front of like, um what is the idea in your mind, what are you pitching them before you're just like, oh, I just we should buy a house together. No, it's, like come up with some concrete ideas of how you think this person, how it would also benefit them as well, right?
Yeah.
Why would they want to do it?
Right. Like it's like what are the complementary here? What are the skills that you have, and then what are the complementary skills that they have? And this should be somewhat thought out ahead of time. And I think a lot of millennials have gotten a bad reputation for just like asking daddy and mommy for money to buy a house. And that is not what we're talking about. And so this, it's definitely more of like, yeah, this is, I see this potential. I have this idea. I have this property in mind. I have this area that I'm really interested in. Here's what I have to bring to the table. And here's what I think you could bring to the table. And here's how I think you could benefit.
Exactly. And there's lots of ways that you can do this. If you're renting right now and you're like, "Ugh, my rent's too high, I really want to get out of the situation, like I want to buy a house to live in," you can pitch someone either as, okay, let's buy this together, live together. You could buy a duplex, one of you live in one side, the other live in the other. You could even say, like I've done this with my sister, where when I wanted to buy a house to live in Austin, and I had time, I had talent, I had cash. I did not have buying power. I could not get approved for the amount I wanted to get approved for. So it was either me try to get approved for like a townhouse for like $200,000, which was going to be, I mean, I could have done it at the time, but it would have been hard, it would have been far away, and it wouldn't have been an investment in my mind because it would only have been like a one bedroom, and like there's not much I could have done with that to increase my investment or house hack. Um, so I approached my sister and asked her. She was living in New York City, had just gotten her first like big girl W2 job, but she was living in New York City. She couldn't buy. She wasn't even thinking about that. She was focusing on her career, but she had money to invest. Not that much, but so she was like, I mean, what this is what I can offer, and she was into it. So she gets a percentage of the deal, and I lived in the house for like 5 years, and then whenever I go to sell it, she'll get that percentage that she put in plus her initial investment.
Yes. It is actually, it takes a lot of mindset. We've talked about this obviously on episode one and then just like throughout. But like your sister's mindset where she was like, ah, actually, I do have some extra cash and I'd like to invest it rather than have it just sit in a savings account. Um, and that was really smart of her. She's going to get a relatively big paycheck for a relatively small amount of effort. So it does take approaching people who you think could get there with their mindset or already have that like investor mindset. We were kind of pioneer, I'm not going to say pioneers. We were the ones who were thinking about this in our friend group, and so we've had to like kind of, we were there first, and then we were like, look what I'm doing, like this is kind of a an interesting way to invest, and then we've gotten our friends and our family on board with it, and that could be your role as well.
That's so true. And um this worked out for her as well because she has a role, like her job takes her to LA, takes her to New York City. Like these are really expensive cities. They're really hard to tap into that market, especially when you're young. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was really smart of her to get into this. And especially in like fashion and in that kind of, she's living in that like or living in that world where it's like fast and people spend money on a lot of things, so she just like has squirreled away little money here and
Yeah.
there, so it's like, she's good,
Yeah.
she has herself covered.
I love it. It's also quite a valuable benefit to be a first time buyer or a primary residence buyer because you have the opportunity to give a lower down payment or to put down less money. And so if you're a first time buyer, you can put as little as 3% down. And if you're not a first time buyer, but it is your primary residence, you can put as little as 5% down. And 3.5 really if you're doing FHA. Sorry to get into the weeds, but what I'm saying is, yeah, what I'm saying is you if someone wanted to help you invest and they had the buying power and maybe you had a little cash but you want to live in the house, it's valuable to that person. Like you're bringing that person a deal that they can invest in. Maybe they're not living with you, but they're investing their money and they'll get a return.
Yeah, that is such a good point. And that's what we did. We put as little money as we could down. Um, I put in she was like that was it. Like she was a silent investor. Any other cash that was brought in, I brought it in to to renovate the property, and to this day that's I've taken her off the loan now by refinancing, so she's not tied to that loan. And even if she was, it's a rental property now, so it really would be a wash for her or an increase of like income for her.
Yeah.
um
It's so cool. It's so cool how flexible and how many
mhm.
options you have in this process. I did something similar on my third house. I bought this house that was pretty run down. I really loved the location though. And I was a new realtor. I had no income. So if you have no income, if you're a new contract worker, you don't have enough background in financially to get a loan. And so I went to my friend who lived in LA and I said, "Hey, do you want to be on the loan for this?" I knew she could get approved. And she was like, "Huh, interesting." And so I had to give her the pitch. I had to say, "This is what you'll get for literally giving me some documents." To her name was on the loan, so that was a piece of it. And then I also didn't have enough cash. um, and I wanted to loop my sister in for the down payment. And so she split the down payment with me. My friend put her name on the loan and they got percentages, each of them did, and I was the one that lived there. I renovated the whole thing. Any extra work that was done or any decisions that were to be made were mine, but we all had different pieces of equity in the house. And to this day, it's still being rented out, and they still have equity.
That's amazing. So did you pay rent on that, or was how did that work? Were
So
you paying the mortgage?
yeah, I paid the whole entire mortgage, but I renovated it such that I had an extra sneaky duplex, if you will. It's just an extra suite on your house that has an exterior entrance, so they didn't have to come into my space. It was kind of like an extra unit. Didn't have a kitchen, and that little unit paid my entire mortgage plus a little bit of cash flow. So they didn't get to see that monthly because they didn't do any of the work. They didn't put any, they didn't put any sweat equity into it. But they still have their equity in the whole thing, and it's still sitting there. So when we go to sell, then they will get whatever cash they put into it plus their amount of equity in profit or in whatever
Mm.
profit that we got.
That's amazing, and I think some people listening might be like, "Well, I don't have, like I don't have someone I can just approach and they'll just do this." And I think you may be surprised at I think just start with making a list. Like, make a list of people that you know, I would say, like, you can start with a big list and be like, anyone that I think would be a good real estate like partner. But typically I would say you want to approach people who have talked about real estate investing before or talked about investing, have brought it up, someone who seems excited or intrigued when you talk about this strategy. So whenever you're talking about real estate, you have those friends who just kind of like just eyes glaze over, and then you have the friends who are like, "Oh my gosh, tell me more about that." So maybe those people are on your list. And like the questions, each person, you're going to want to have like numbers or like a concept to pitch to them anyway, and it doesn't have to be like, don't get like nervous about this. This is like can be start very casually. Um but then, like cater some of the questions towards these people. Like what, some people might have, like you need to anticipate what some of the questions might be. Like some people will say, well, what if something goes wrong? And we talked about that in the last episode. So listen to that episode and write down all those things about operating agreements so you can say like, "Oh, no worries. This is what we would do."
Right.
And then yeah.
Or what if I want my money back? It's like, okay, this is the timeline. This is how long we're going to be invested. Past that, we can sell when either party wants to sell. Or, it's like addressing those, and the person you approach, you probably know somewhat well. And if you don't, then you're just thinking about all of these things. But like I knew that Eleanor, who I bought that house I was talking about with, she would be um, concerned about like her buying power in the future if she would do this. And so I, it- you can only buy, you can only have 10 loans in your name, which sounds like a lot, but there's one is taken up for her. But I told her after 1 year, if she doesn't make any of the payments, like we can prove that I made every single payment, then that does not count against her and she'll be able to get another mortgage, which she
Mm.
she ended up doing.
And it is like, yeah, the buying power, or people are probably a little bit more concerned about that maybe than like having 10 loans in their name,
Yeah,
maybe.
yes.
Um, that would be something I would be like, well, what's the logistics of that?
Right.
Like,
Like what if I wanted to buy something in a year?
right. That was what
Yeah.
my sister asked. And yeah, like that is really important to discuss. And you can have a set plan and discuss it with them, and also keep in mind that like things change. What if the
Yep.
market like booms and then we're like, oh my gosh, we have $400,000 in equity, like that's insane, what should we do? Should we sell
Yeah.
it and buy something else and we all cash out, or like, or the market could crash or whatever. But remember, even like with anything investing, like we are long-term investors. That's our always our plan when we buy something. Just like with the stock market, you're not day traders, like you hold. So like when
Yes.
something drops, it's tempting to be like, oh my gosh, we got to get out of here. But
Right.
no, hold on and wait until that will inevitably change, and
Yes.
then you can think about if you want to sell
Yes,
something.
yes, yes. And with people who are super cautious or people who need to see it all laid out, the long-term investment model is really, really attractive when you put it on paper. You can even put that into a spreadsheet and say, okay, if we cover this payment fully with the taxes and the insurance, maybe there's a little cash flow, but really we're long-term holds, so it doesn't really matter how much money we're getting from it. And then we have the average appreciation, which across the country is about 4%. And then you calculate that out every year for the next 15 years or even 10 years. You'd be kind of surprised at like how big those numbers get. And then it does seem kind of like a no-brainer. Like you can kind of lay it out.
I would say, like, as long as you're covering your mortgage and all your expenses, see that as a win. I mean, it's so good to also cash flow. But it just depends on the property, right? Like if you're buying a beach house or a lake house or whatever, and you cover all your expenses and your mortgage, and then you get to go on a free, essentially free vacation. I mean, yes, I feel like people are gonna be like, that's not free. You invested in it. But no, like that. Yeah, like, and you're not selling in like a year or two. Like this, such a win. That's
Yes,
such a
yes, yes.
win.
And that's another thing when you're pitching, you also have to know this person's or like get to know their investment thesis. Like is that a win for them? If they're not getting much out of it monthly, but like eventually it will be a big return and they get to go to a beach house and that seems like a win for them, pitch that to them. If this is a cash flow play and after we have a certain amount in the reserves, they get to take home $500 a month every month, then that's the type of property you're looking for and that's what you're pitching to them.
Yes, that's so true. And another thing, yeah, another something that someone might ask, or if they don't ask, you should probably bring it up,
Mhm.
is like how you would be splitting your responsibilities. Because
Yes.
I do think a lot of people consider real estate as a passive investment at some point, and it's not. It will not
Yeah.
be passive. There is a little, I don't know, not a lot of situations where real estate is passive.
Yes. I know we had a comment recently that was like, I like how you're just like pretending like this is so easy for people to do now. I'm like, okay, first of all, we have never said it's easy.
No.
That is not our pitch to anyone.
We've talked about how we've been crying on the floor at some
Yeah.
point, like after a spilled can of paint, or
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
literally like
Exactly. Yes. So that was just like it's so funny, and I just never want anyone to take that away from what we're saying because then you'll come back and say that we're liars because it is not easy.
No,
Um,
but it's rewarding. It's
yes.
you gain confidence. You're setting yourself financially, like up for success. You're diversifying your investments. Like you're you're also having a potentially like a property that you can use for yourself, for your friends, for your it's there's a lot, but it's not
Right.
passive.
No,
So what are
no.
your responsibilities? Who is doing what?
Yes, and that is also shows how much you're thinking this out, because that's definitely a point of contention for people is like, well, I'm doing more than you, or you're not doing enough, and that's like the more you talk about that and think that through and be realistic about it with your own time and your partner's time, the more that they'll be like, okay, this is seeming doable because this is being like all talked about up front.
And the communication, we cannot stress that enough. Having
Yes.
hard conversations, not avoiding an awkward conversation. Do not text someone, do not
In
do not
person. Call
do
them.
not email them. Talk to them in person, your
Yeah.
partner. That's so important. Things won't get, you know, uh misconstrued. What am I trying to say?
Misconstrued.
There we go.
Yes.
Yeah, you want it to be very clear and you want to be kind. Kind, clear is kind.
Yes.
um yeah, and what did we do? Well, I didn't do it. What we had a meeting today, discuss like a we have a bought a property with four, me,
Yeah.
Steph, and then
5
three,
total.
five total.
Yeah.
Me and Steph are kind of more of like silent investors on this. Were you on that call?
No.
Okay, so never mind. We don't really know. They
Yeah.
met today, the three
Main.
partners,
Yeah.
yeah, the main partners, to talk about taxes, what it's a new year, what's the strategy, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um yeah.
And that was something that we learned this way too. Like we put in way less than everyone else did, and so we're pretty low stakes owners, and so we're essentially silent investors. We did some stuff up front, but definitely with the equity split, we all brought the amount of money that is equivalent to our split, which means the amount of work or the amount of time or the amount of decision making is in concert with the amount of equity we have. So we have like right at 10% equity. We just don't have much say. So we weren't needed on that meeting.
They don't need to make decisions
Yeah, yeah.
with us. They can do it without us. Um I would say also, if you're thinking about pitching someone, first make your list, go down your list, and then like, who do you think would be excited to do this with, you know? And then we do have like a free mini course on buying with friends. So I would watch that. And then also, whoever responds well to your conversation about potentially buying a property, send them that mini course and say, "Hey, would you want to like go to coffee or like go to a coffee shop or like meet at my house and let's watch this together?" And we'll pause it and ask each other questions as, things come up. That could be another like good research phase for both of you and like a good practice for communication for you.
I love that. And send them these episodes
Yes, yes.
on the same page. Yeah, I think that a big part of this process is actually taking action, and it's really really easy to not do anything, and then you look back 20 years later and you're like, oh, I really should have done like something. I was living in Austin in this wild period of growth, like wow, I regret not doing anything. And so this is that time. This is the time when you're approaching people, you're making a plan, you're doing the research. It is so so easy to not do anything.
It is, and to make up the excuses that all these people in the comments have done,
Yeah.
and it's yeah, don't do that.
Yeah.
At least do some research, and it might not be for you. We're not saying everyone needs to do this. Just
Yes.
don't write it off without at least like considering it.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
do you
Let's
want to
see.
share your
Yes.
story?
So I know I already shared about one partnership, but I did approach my mom about partnership, my second house. So I bought my first house and I was like, "Oh, cool. This is like has potential to really, give me some freedom, give me some financial freedom." And I saw that Austin was growing. And it was another one of those things, like you mentioned, when I saw Austin was growing, I was like, well, that's obvious, right? Like everybody's seeing this. And everybody might be seeing it, or some people might be noticing it, but not everyone is taking action. And so that was like the thing that differentiated ourselves from a lot of other people living in the growing Austin in 2013 through 2016. So I approached my mom, and I wasn't approaching her again to say, hey, will you give me money so I can buy a house?
Well, I feel like you talking about your mom's background like a little bit because she wouldn't do that, right? Like
Yeah.
she doesn't. She was a teacher. Like she's not
Yes.
like a multi-million or wasn't at the time.
No, no. Oh yeah, yeah. She would never have given me money. But yeah, she was also a teacher. We were both teachers at the time. She is extremely scrappy. And yeah, she didn't have just like money laying around. However, she had just gotten divorced and she had sold a house that she had bought right after or something. She had like some money that was so rare for us and her. And I was like, okay, I knew that she had that. I was like, this is something I would never ask her to give it to me, but I knew that Austin was growing. And I was like, hey, mom, I think that there's an opportunity here for us to, buy a house, fix it up ourselves, and, really truly partner on this. And as teachers, we had summers off. So we were able to really put in that sweat equity. We each had the time to devote to this like DIY renovation. So we definitely like didn't we went in kind of naive, of course. But I had the deal. I was like, here's the locations. I know I had the talent in that regard. Like I knew this area better than most people. And so I was like, this is where I think we could. It's so funny now because the places we were looking to buy, where we actually ended up buying on the east, like right off of East 7th, I was like, this might be a little far. And now it's
I
like
know.
it's
It's
like
crazy.
basically downtown. It's so wild. So that's good. That's good perspective too. But the pitch, luckily she is like quite I don't know, she's like a go-getter too. She's like she likes a challenge. So it wasn't like a super super difficult pitch, but it was definitely like this could be really really beneficial for both of us. And then she always wanted to get out of we lived in the suburbs of Houston. She's a lesbian, and she was like the only lesbian within 40 miles. And so she was always wanting to get out of there and move to Austin.
Mhm.
So she saw this as also a place where she could potentially move one day.
Mhm.
And so we bought it, we renovated it together with her and her partner too, who she's still with. And we made a little back house. We like really did it. I house hacked it to high heaven, every single
Oh
nook
my
and
gosh.
cranny of
Yeah.
that place. Covered my entire mortgage. And as a teacher, that is a huge deal. I mean, it was life changing.
Yeah.
And then 2 years later, she was like, I'm ready to move to Austin. And so I bought another house, that one that I was speaking about earlier with my sister and my friend, and she moved into that house, and she lives there to this day.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, I would also like I think so at the time you were like what, 26,
I was
25?
exactly. I was 26.
Yeah. And I know that you made that mental list in your head. Like who
Oh.
could I do this with? And like I know so when that's kind of when Steph and I met around that time.
Mhm.
And we both related to being so excited about this concept, but not having anyone to talk to about it. And I get it. Like our friends were like, I am trying to figure out my life. Like I am not thinking about, you know, using my savings to invest in this theory that you have.
Yeah. Yes.
So
Yes, yes, exactly. It was definitely the list before we had this framework, of course. And before I even was an agent, I used an agent to buy my first two houses. And then I was like, okay, this is exciting. Like covering my largest expense every month is truly exciting. And that's when I realized that I really had to get creative about partnership, or else there's no way I could move forward, because I didn't have any money and I had very little income. I think I was making about $40,000 a year.
in that
So
in that article, I was like, it's mentioned that I made 35,000 a year when I first moved to Austin, and someone was like, "What is she doing? Collecting cans?" And I was like, "Some people make that."
That the reading the comments is not it. It's so
I
funny.
was like, I that was what I thought I was rich. I was
Oh,
23.
I was so rich. I felt so rich. I was making 43,000 a year, but I love the concept. I love the idea that someone could make $35,000 a year collecting cans in
I
Austin.
know. I was like, "Can I do that?"
That was probably some tech bro who was like making
So
200K and like couldn't even fathom like spending 35K a month. It's so funny. But yeah,
uh,
I mean, I think that's why we got so excited about real estate because you don't need to be that rich. I mean, you don't have to be have a lot of money or a lot of means to get started. It's like a low barrier to entry and
mhm.
especially low barrier when you know how to utilize partnerships and
And
buying with friends.
I will say what we were doing at that age was honestly really risky, seemingly now like we didn't have we had a low income, not that much savings, and we were naive, so
Yes.
naive. And I think
Yes.
that was a little good because I also think like at that age, I'm like, what do I have to lose? Like
Yeah.
now I have a lot to lose, like in my head, or it
Yeah,
feels
yeah,
like I have
yeah.
a lot more to
Totally.
lose. Or back then you're like, I'm young, I can do anything.
100%. Like right before I bought my first house, we lived in a house on the east side with 6 people. We literally rented out the closet under the stairs. Like if I had to
Harry
go to,
Potter.
yeah, it was a nice closet. It fit a whole twin bed. Um, if I had to go to living there at that point in my life, it wouldn't have been that much of a backslide. It was honestly like 6 months ago, you know?
Yes.
So I was like, what if I lose everything? I literally have nothing.
I have nothing. So, yeah. So I get like some people who are trying to get into this concept when they have more than a twin
Yes.
bed in a closet.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, we
Eh,
get it. And I think that's why we have so many entry points, right? We have that entry point where you really are putting everything on the line. And that's, you're 25, you're ready to have 4 roommates. But we also have the sneaky duplex, we have the ADU, there's so many ways to like also maintain a really high quality of life and and invest in real estate. And that is like a large part of the partnership piece too. It's like you're not putting everything on the line because you're sharing the liability and the cost with someone else.
true. So, were there any in that initial partnership, were there any like stresses or challenges of working with a family member?
Well, so we spent 6 weeks sleeping
Together.
in together, sleeping in one room, um, on an air mattress in a construction zone. So
Mm.
yes, I would
Mm.
say there were some downsides. But
Not all partnerships
yeah,
have to be like that.
no, no, no,
We
definitely
were
not.
crazy.
This was extreme, extreme,
We had
extreme.
no options,
Yeah, yeah.
or we thought we didn't.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, it was extreme. So I would say, I mean, even a DIY renovation when you have no skills is a huge undertaking. And it's just like not everyone has to do that. But I do looking back, I mean, we have, $800,000 in equity in that house now. My mom actually just used the equity in that house to buy a condo in Mexico. So that one partnership has provided spaces for us to live, has provided income. They Airbnb piece of it out and they like make a bunch of money on it. I don't see that money because I don't live there anymore, but I still have my equity piece. And then they have rolled that equity into buying in a different country, which is so cool. So I would say any of the downsides like were far, far outweighed by looking back how good it was. But yes, I think partnering with someone, it just takes a lot of skills, communication skills. It takes a lot of like patience. It takes a lot of like large picture, big picture vision, you know?
Yeah, and knowing
Which
yourself, like, you're
yes.
very, 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 very patient with your mom, like,
Yes.
very patient, and, um, I am not that way with my dad or my parents.
Yeah.
I'm saying my dad because like, he would be the one I'd probably partner with on
Yeah.
something, and I kinda tested that out a little bit and quickly realized that would make my life miserable. So I would not partner with him in most capacities unless he was a silent investor or I was. And
Yes.
so it's like knowing that if you can be patient, if you're not super triggered by your parents, don't, I mean, it could be a seemingly like, oh, that's your first go-to who might like you might trust them, or they might have some a nest egg that they're willing to invest. But if you think that will be a miserable process, do not do it.
Do not, do not.
Don't.
Yeah, there is a point to where like it's not worth it. Like if it's so much grief that there's a point where you could just be like, you know what? No, I don't care how much money I lose. I'm not doing this anymore. Which is not the point you want to get to, because obviously you're not seeing that ROI. You're not seeing that upside. So that is so smart. That's
And
like
they're
know
not going
yourself.
anywhere, really.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. So I would say, yeah, know yourself and your relationships with that person. Maybe do like a hard thing with whoever your partner is. Like I was gonna say like a hiking day or something, or like a escape room.
Putting together a piece of IKEA
Yes,
furniture.
yes, yes. That's a great test. Honestly.
Wait, that should be it. If you can't put a piece of IKEA furniture together with someone without like getting mad at each other, do not
This
partner.
this is good. This is good. I bet we could put together some sort of like week long amount of challenges that you should do before you partner with someone. That's a good idea.
That'd be so fun actually for us.
Yes. Yeah. I think that there's like something to doing hard things. And there's a lot of times that's why we love doing this, because it makes your relationship so much deeper. I mean, we usually you're seeing people at brunch or happy hour looking their best, acting their best. And it's just like really rare to see the side of someone. And so it's been really fun and an in-depth look into someone else's personality. Ideas, like some practical ideas and pitching yourself, like making a you
Mm,
could you
yeah.
could present it in any way. Like if you know that the person you're pitching to would react weirdly to like a slideshow, then don't do that. But like some people would really appreciate that, you know?
That's true. Yeah, like when you're pitching someone, again, it's like think about the questions they would ask. Also, how would they want to be pitched?
Yeah.
That's such a good point. Like a one sheeter.
Right.
I think we did when we were doing live course, what am I
Yeah.
trying to say? We were doing our course live
Yeah.
homeschool, which you can take on YouTube. It's free. But at
Yeah.
one point me and Steph were teaching it live, and someone a girl actually who was in college was like, I have my aunt and uncle who are interested in partnering with me. I've talked to them already um, about buying where my school is, and I would live there and I would manage the other tenants, and then I would manage it when I leave college. And so we were helping her come up with, how to present this to her aunt and uncle.
Yeah.
I think we did come up with a presentation style, like where she would pick out like 3 properties, analyze them. This is why she think it would work. And then so there's just so many different ways that you can do it. I think they were going to be more silent investors, just give her the
Right.
cash. But
Right. There's so many different ways. And then I mean, emphasize to them if you, which in whichever way you're doing it, like if this doesn't feel fair, or like, we can talk about the equity splits, or we can talk, all of this is negotiable. I'm not like laying all of this out in stone. Um, but yeah, I think knowing your audience and then knowing yourself will make for a really like good pitch. I do know that when I when I wanted like a cell phone when I was younger, I made like a I don't even know if we had PowerPoint, how whatever. But I made a like a trifold board, and they were like, "Oh, me, that was so responsible of you, and like you put such
uh,
effort into it, you know." So maybe that would be the
you were
sentiment
playing
from
chess when I
yeah.
was screaming that I wanted a phone.
I was like, "Look how responsible I am. I pasted these things on this board."
God, if I did that, my dad would have been like, "I'll buy you 5
Yeah.
phones." Like, okay.
Yeah.
Prodigy.
Yeah, yeah. See, I just feel like it does go a long way when you've like put some real thought into something.
Mhm. And this is the exciting part. I really do think you should be excited about this. Like it is kind of like you're applying for jobs, which sometimes I don't know. That's what my partner's doing right now, and I'm like, but I know it's disheartening, but it's also exciting because you're like, oh, there's all these opportunities out there that
Yes,
I could like work at
possibility.
this company. Who knows where I'll be? And so like this could be really exciting. And even I feel like it should be exciting all the way up to where this kind of happened to me recently, where, we're talking, I don't know if we've talked about this. Should we? The pickleball thing?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Steph and I were like throwing around ideas of starting a pickleball facility, and like, we're working with someone else with it, and we were so excited. And then like, it's been like a couple months of talking about it and coming up with ideas, and then when it got to the point where we went to the space that we wanted to do this at, and like then started getting really nitty gritty with all the details, and that's when I was like, I'm getting overwhelmed. I'm stressed out,
Yeah, yes.
and
There
that's
is
normal.
yes, there's always that part. There's always that piece. And I think, I mean,
Hmm.
if I could put deals together, I
Hmm.
would do it all day. It's so fun. And just like thinking about all the different pieces that go together, it's such an exciting part of the process. And then you definitely hit that reality of like, oh yeah, this is going to be a lot of work. And it's going to require some like real time and energy. But yeah, it's all part of the process. We've mentioned this before, but there's definitely um like a cycle. What have we called it before? I don't even know, but like it's excitement. You can conquer the worlds, and then you start and you're like, okay, cool, yes, and then you hit this like pit of like, okay, well, nothing will ever be good again,
Yeah,
and
it's like
then
2 weeks before the project's done. It
yes,
depends on what like we're talking about a renovation, I think,
yeah,
where
yeah, yeah,
you're
yeah,
like,
true, true,
yeah,
true, true,
so
yeah,
exciting, and then you're like in it, and then one like every one little thing goes wrong, and
yeah,
you crumble.
yes, exactly. But I also want to stress we've talked a lot about renovation because we've done a lot of renovation, but if you're not into that, partnership is also a good opportunity. Like you could do a turnkey partnership because that's your personality and that's your partner's personality, and that's also a really good idea, you know? And so like you don't necessarily have to go on that roller coaster, but it's
No.
still like there's still some realities that you'll have to face even with the turnkey. But regardless, you just don't have to be renovating everything. It's like you could buy something already pretty.
Yeah, I hate to compare it to this because I haven't gone through it, but I would I feel like for me, renovation, like taking on these projects feels like when women give birth. Like they're just like they forget
Yeah,
how
yes.
hard it is.
Yes.
And then you have this like really cool thing that you created and you wanted to do it again sometimes. That is how renovations have felt like to me, where it's so rewarding in the end. Like I would not trade any of the shit I know that I've gone through with renovating with this kind of these kind of projects,
Right.
because I just I feel so confident. I was not a confident person. I don't think I would have just grown into being a confident person if I
Without
hadn't put myself through these intense
yes.
challenges.
Oh, yes. Yes, you grow so much. Pushing yourself outside your comfort zone is the way that you grow. And this is definitely we definitely pushed ourselves very hard outside our comfort zones multiple
Mm.
times.
Mhm.
It's definitely like I think there's like some sort of chemical in a mom's brain that forces her to forget so that she'll want to do it again.
uh,
So yeah, I just think that this is all like the idea of partnership is so exciting for me. Obviously, we've both done it so many times and have faced the challenges, but like looking back, it's always been worth it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here talking to you about it. So I yeah, embrace all of the phases, but the pitching phase is like you're getting people hyped. You're like this is exciting.
mhm. That's very true. Anything else you want to share about buying with friends?
Um, I
Pitching
would
people?
I would say for sure if you don't have friends, and that's the other thing we've mentioned this on the podcast before, but like if you don't have friends that you're like, oh yeah, excited about partnering with, we were in that same position, and join our women investor group. We have one. If you're not in Austin, you can still join online on Facebook. There's definitely like groups like this popping up everywhere. I would say ours is probably the best, but
But I'm
um,
not biased,
yeah,
but
yeah. But I would just like put yourself out there. Like, get you don't have friends right now that are interested in this. Get those friends.
yeah, yeah, we I know I'm biased, but we are the only real estate brokerage in the country that focuses on this,
Yeah.
and everyone on our team has done this. So it's really, it's just try to intertwine yourself into this community in some way, in some capacity.
Yeah.
And there's no way you will not find someone.
Yes. And really like getting a team together that gets it, that like specifically has done it before. Ideally, you're in Austin and you can use our team, because it is really easy for someone to be like, that's not the traditional way to do it. You shouldn't do it. You know, it's easy to get talked out of it. But when you have a team that is like, oh yeah, like we get it. We know how to do this creatively. We are open to different ways to put these things together. It's a lot easier.
Exactly. And this didn't exist for me and Steph. And that's, we found each other on Instagram. So
Yeah.
search hashtags, search like
Yeah.
renovating, like anything, like the part of town you live in, real estate, whatever. And like try to find other people that seem like minded to you that you would be interested in networking with. Like it takes a while, it can take a while to build that relationship. But you can have friends who are like, this is my like, we talk about business, we talk about real estate, we talk about finances. Like I think we each have like friends and we are that for each other, that are like, that's what we like to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah. It really makes a difference who you surround yourself with.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I love this. I love this topic. I mean, we could obviously talk about this for hours. This is our third hour talking about it. We really love it. And it's just like the possibilities are endless. So yeah. And make sure you're following us on Instagram. Share this with your friends, and please leave us a review.
Yes, we would love that. Okay, see you next week.
All right. Bye.
Bye.